I went on Facebook Marketplace and found the cheapest tonneau cover that I could. This only cost $50, and we're going to use everything that we have in the garage to transform it into something that is going to be perfect for the Ute. Ever since the Ute conversion process, I've been trying to keep stuff in the bed, but the bed is not waterproof because I have no cover on it. Everything underneath the aluminum panels is safe because we've gone through the sealing process, and I've been leak-free. The cabin is leak-free too. But I want to seamlessly integrate a cover that'll go all the way from the rear windshield all the way to the deck lid. And here's where that comes in. This is a tonneau cover that came off of a 2003 Dodge Ram, and we'll be able to section it and get it to fit just right to seamlessly integrate our tail end. Let me get it off and I'll show you what's next. Now, because of the way that the tailgate on the Charger is shaped, it comes up and over. It's higher than the rest of the bed. So I need to come up with a way that still allows me to keep that tailgate while creating a leak-free seal across the back. Thankfully, we have a vehicle that was designed with something like that in mind, the Avalanche. Notice when it's shut, it sits just as high as the tonneau cover. But when it's down, it has this seal that creates that leak-free seal. So that's the same type of seal that we have to create that butts up right against here. Now, on the majority of tonneau covers that I've experienced, you have the handle and the lock right here at the end. But because all of that is going to be covered up by the tailgate, we're going to lop all of that off. And this finished edge will be a seal similar to the Avalanche as well. Now that forces a question. How are you going to lock and unlock the tonneau cover? Remember a few episodes ago where I incorporated this handle? I always knew this was going to be the manual override, but I would have to come up with a way to automatically release the tailgate when commanded. That's where door poppers come in. So since this handle is actuating the latches at the end, all I need to do are to have door poppers that do the same function. That way the door can release. It can slowly come down with the help of shocks that I'll install later on. And then I'll have access to open up the tonneau cover with the tailgate out of the way. This is the very reason that I've held off on installing some sort of cover here and a spoiler that I eventually want to do, is because all of it has to function and look correct, and I needed a tonneau cover to be able to put those pieces of the puzzle together. All right, so we're back out here, and I have to take off this entire latching mechanism because we're going to end up cutting a few inches into this, and we're also going to cut it straight down the middle and then section out a few inches. So I'll unbolt all of these, unbolt this right in here. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll make our initial chop. And then all of this, we're going to need to kind of disassemble and clean up, but we'll get to that a little bit later. All right, so to give some context, the opening on the truck is 71 inches from rear glass to tailgate. And 71 puts me right in the middle of that bracket. So not exactly where I'd like to be. I was hoping I would come up to maybe right around here, and that way I wouldn't have to move this. But the hardware is all rusty, so it's supposed to take 1/4 inch, but yeah, none of that is coming off easily. It's all rounding off. You really don't know what you're getting into until after you make your first cut, but this is the life I signed up for. All right, so I did not know that there's wood in between these layers. I could see why we need that additional strength. I didn't think it was fiberglass either, but it just got really tough to cut when we got to those hinge areas. And that bodes well for me drilling out these screws and placing it a little bit further north. And that way we'll have a little bit more lift to our tonneau cover, but the great part is we'll be able to either get a shorter shock or do something, even if we have to shorten one of these rods to make up for it. Either way, I'm all game. But it's interesting to see the cardboard that's in there too. So we got fiberglass, cardboard, wood, fiberglass, and then mat right there. So it's getting a little bit late. I'm gonna clean up and call it a night. And then in the morning, we'll hop back on this and make some more progress. So I got this thing apart and I love the way it's constructed. It's going to be super easy for me to turn it into what I want. Let me bring you in for a closer look. So we have a 2-piece front rail section where this lip goes on the inside and then this lip goes on the outside. Note how the color is, and it goes kind of like that, right? This interior C channel right here, you can see how it has that little slot right there. Those are for the L-shaped brackets. The reason why I'm so stoked is I thought I was gonna have to cut it in the middle, weld it back up, and bring it into length. But I can just chop right at the edge, re-drill the holes for exactly where I need it, and I can leave the other side in the middle alone. That'll bring me exactly where I need to go so I can shrink it the 6 inches that I need, and the frame will be all right. Coming over to the fiberglass, now that I have this thing out of the way, I can just chop the fiberglass right down the middle, remove my 6.5 inches, and then I'm golden. If you like this type of content, smash that like button, let me know how I did in the comments, and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel grow, and that helps me make even more videos. Okay, so don't mind that gap. I'm gonna take care of that a little bit later. I just wanna make sure that the body line looks right. I can fix everything else. So I really wanted to hug this tighter, but I still need to account for it going up and down. So I'm gonna keep that in mind. But the radius I wanna recreate is the same as the radius that this is right now. So we've gotten that there. We got our body line looking really, really good there. And the rear is the real killer. So that's what I'm trying to create. You see that? Where it meets right here is exactly where I expect it to be. Maybe there. That looks better. Yeah, that's it right there. Now we're complementing the lines that already exist on the car, and we're giving a nod to the Ute by having that really nice line coming straight back. And the way that we'll take care of all of this is with the extra inches that we still have to play with when we start to cut and section the middle piece. So that aside, here's what we're looking like, and here's the extra material that we have to work with. We still have to deal with this, these body lines that are right here and right here, make them look symmetrical and really good. But I have this much material to play with when I'm indenting in here and pushing up this to hug the rear screen better. And then we're gonna create a really nice butt up that comes to the inside of the tailgate. All right, don't pay attention to the edge real quick. Just look at the body lines. Look at those 2 body lines that are there. I love the way that they're symmetrical. And when it comes time to cut the fiberglass tonneau cover lengthwise, I'm gonna split the difference between these right here. And then that way I'll be able to keep these in the position that they are in. Love the way that looks. All right, so the construction of this frame is relatively easy. You have 2 prongs on each side. That controls how it snatches into the bed rail. They're definitely needed on this truck, and thankfully Mark includes that little extra lip into the aluminum bedside so we can latch onto that for our frame. By design, we got a frame and a tonneau cover that's longer than this bed, so we can chop and re-drill holes and make things fit exactly the way we want to. By my calculations, we're about 7.5 inches too long. And that will get all of this tucked up under and still give me enough clearance for this part of the bracket that slides in at the frontmost part of the rail. 7.5 inches is really close to this first one. But not to worry, we can still loosen it and slide it back. So we'll just do that. And that way we have maximum adjustability in how we clamp to the bedside. So let's head back over to our Smyth Performance workbench and we can give this thing a shot. So here's what we're looking at so far. We got this up till about here, which is perfect. The fiberglass can still extend past it. That's totally fine. We got our L-shaped bracket in place, and now we can start to slide this into here and see where everything is lining up, kind of actuate how the cover opens and closes and see how close we're getting to the glass. Make sure our clearance is just right. Now you're able to see these two pieces of metal. That's what sandwiches in between the lip of that tonneau cover. And this is what gives you that fold up actuation there. So I need to make sure I'm far enough away from the glass and the fiberglass in order not to impact it. And we're not going that far up with it, so I'm pretty safe. But like this is where it starts to contact the fiberglass. But the thing is, if you look right here, none of this metal is anywhere near the actual fiberglass. So on that side, we're going to chop it off around the same area. Because of course, we got to make room for this on the other side. So now I can visually mark on that side where exactly this rail is going to go and how much I need to cut off on that side. Now we got this side cut out to fit. We can nail down exactly where we're going to cut. That bar is straight. This bar is straight. And mark exactly where we're going to cut. It's going to meet up with that line right there. So that's exactly where I want to make my mark. And the great part is you have a frame of reference, which is the other side. So you know exactly where you need to mark. So if this cut that controls the folding section is different than the cut that fits the rail, you've got the entire play right in front of you. You just got to go over to the other side and cheat. Okay. Now remember, we cut off on this side. The holes that are drilled into this L-shaped bracket have to go through this section. So we're going to have to mark and drill new holes out. Go. All right, so now we're looking good. We got the entire frame all set in place and adapted to our halyard. Now we need to take care of, what do we need to take care of? Now after we drill the holes out on that side, we can move on to the fiberglass piece and making sure everything fits. All right, so it's the next day, and with the first 3/4 looking good, we needed to concentrate on this back end. I was thinking a little bit about how I need to do it, and I came up with a plan. So I'm going to mark out exactly where the tailgate starts. And I'm going to cut maybe about an inch back. Now, the reason I need that inch clearance is I have to create a fiberglass bumper that will rest up against the seal that will rest up against the tailgate. So I need that type of clearance. And I'm also going to have to create some type of swoop for it to meet the tailgate because the tailgate isn't dead straight and this tonneau cover is. And now that I created the reference line in black, I can come back and create it in white. And the white line will tell me exactly where I need to cut. It'll give me that inch of clearance that I was asking for. So one thing that I'm going to do to get additional clearance up in here is cut the bottom layer of fiberglass and the cardboard. And that way, that'll gain me about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to do it all the way along that faint line so that that frame can sit inward. Then I'll reinforce the fiberglass with another layer to make sure it's nice and strong. All right, so this just goes to show you, with enough cutting, you can make anything work. Take a look at how much we've chopped out and lowered this section in comparison to the other side. We're seeing 1.5 inches, maybe 1 3/4 when we get all the way down here. And this is what I wanted. I wanted less space. I wanted less height here. And I could even do a little chop to the flange and get a little bit more if I wanted to. Don't mind the gap. We're going to recreate that in a way that's going to complement the body line of the truck even more. But here's what we're really after. We wanted to create something that was really, really close. And I think we have. Now, it's just a little bit too high in the middle, but I got a couple ideas. We can modify the fiberglass to create that body line, that little accent detail line, or we can build up on the tailgate to be able to match it. Not sure which way I'm leaning right now, but we'll figure it out. But the important piece right now is to be able to get that side to match that side. So in 1, 2, 3, we'll be all set. Okay, so now I've gotten this side trimmed about as much as that side. You can tell that it's even. I've put in these temporary metal brackets just so I can hold everything together and I can lift it all up as one. But I need to figure out what's going on here. So like I said earlier, I need to bring that all together with a seal, and this panel needs to line up with the top of this. So I got 2 ways to go about it. Once I put my spoiler on here, it's going to give it a really, really good look where it kind of ties in the entire bedside, but we're adding even more height there. So I could either fiberglass all of this in, work it so that it's all smooth and it kind of swoops up, and there's a nice transition from what it is now into this like raised little elevated platform. Or, and I have to remove this for this section, but imagine that it's still there. I'm going to trim this spoiler that's supposed to go on the Ranger tailgate if I still had it, and it's going to end up going in here, and then this swoop mirrors this swoop pretty nicely. So once I trim down the sides and all of that, I may be solving the problem of having a smooth surface for the seal to go on and getting this raised elevated platform all in one piece that already exists. So since I have nothing to lose on this, I'm going to cut the spoiler, trim it to like these edges right here, and then kind of line it up and see if I like what that looks like. All right, so I chopped these 2 off, and here's what we're dealing with. Let me back up a bit so you can see what I'm dealing with. And I ain't mad at it. It's gonna be hard to see the vision until everything is all one color, but the spoiler is just a little bit too high, so we're likely gonna have to follow the contour of the trunk a little bit more. But I really like how it looks, as it's ramping up. I'm thinking it may be best to work from a piece that's already fiberglass. And even if I have to trim this back a little bit more so it could sit a little bit lower, that's totally fine. As you can see down here, we've got a lot of gap. And part of that is because this is kind of bowed inward, kind of like that. So we'll be able to pick that up and close some of that gap some more. But I think this is the direction that I want to go. So we'll get the trimming, the massaging, and bonding, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more something to look at. And here's an even better look once I got that gap out of the way. It's still a little bit, especially when you dip down here, because this kind of goes up and then back down on the other side. But you're starting to see what it looks like with the cover was dead even. And of course, we have to work on this gap a little bit because we're going to need enough to get the seal in and all the way across. And I made my mark right here. This is where we're going to cut so that we can get this even with this. So then there'll be maybe like this sliver of fiberglass that'll pop out, and then we'll need to fill it in and get it nice and level there. We'll panel bond it from this rough side and on the top, and then we'll use our fiberglass and body filler to kind of smooth everything in on this front. The key piece to the eye is to get this transition right, because we got this coming down to deal with. We got this going up and over to deal with. And as this comes down further and further, you have this hump slimming. And the reason why I like this hump and keeping it is it's a really good nod to the front end, right? You have this big bulging similar design line up here, and it's gradually coming down and in. So we're trying to replicate that on the back side as well. But this is the most excited that I've been about this since I've started it. So I'm really hoping that it looks as good as it does in my mind, and I can create that vision out here where it counts. I used the tailgate line I drew to freehand the cut across the old spoiler. Once I was happy with that, I ground down the tonneau cover seam and mixed in some panel bond to apply enough to bond the top layer of the two pieces. All right, so now we're back in the garage. I got the tonneau cover off of the car, and now we can take a look at everything, sand it down, fill everything where we need to, and just really strengthen the two halves of this. Now on this side, the fiberglass, cardboard, and then inner fiberglass is all about 3/4 of an inch thick. And I want to have this filler on the inside of both. So then I'm gonna come back and sand all of this down, and then I'm gonna apply another layer of panel bond right on top, so we can bond these two pieces of fiberglass together. After that, then we can skim coat everything and get everything smooth. On this side, I'm just gonna sand everything down, make sure there's no dips. If I'm happy with the strength of everything down here, then I'll just come back with some fiberglass filler, smooth everything out. Then I'll remove this bracket, and in that bracket, use panel bond along here, and then come back with fiberglass and smooth everything out. It's a fair amount of work, but it'll go really quickly. The longest part is just waiting for stuff to dry. All right, so we made a lot of progress on it. Everything is bonded together. It's smoothish. And what we need to do is just skim coat all of this right down the center and start from a really good place. So I'm mixing up my body filler right now. I'm gonna mix it up with a little bit of extra fiberglass resin just to make sure it can smoothly lay out. And then when we get down here, we can, if we have enough, we can work on this swoop right here. And then I'm gonna tackle this as a separate project. Once we get the entire thing back on the car, we can assess the highs and lows and then add some kitty hair and sand as needed. Thank you so much for watching this episode. On the next one, we finish the tonneau cover and our wide body kit goes seamless. paint and block sand for a show quality finish.